So good afternoon to everyone. It's really a very big pleasure to be here. As you already, as I've been introduced, I'm coming from Europe, especially from Italy. My pleasure to be here with you today. It's my first time in India, so I'm very glad to be here. Let's say the target of my presentation, just to share with you a little bit of flavor of what's happened in the past years in Europe and which is nowadays the actual situation. So first of all, what we are talking about. In Europe, the conventional cages, traditional cages, have been banned since 2012, and now we are rearing the laying hens according to 4 different rearing systems. We have the enriched cages, called also colony cages, then we have aviary or barn system, then we have the free range and the organic. But which are the main difference according to each rearing system? If we are looking to the colony cages and thinking about now for a moment conventional cages, how many birds you are putting in a conventional cages? A big group of layers in a single cage. That means that the social structure, I mean the hierarchy of the group of the flock will be rearranged constantly. So the birds are a little bit under stress under considering this specific topic, I would say. This parameter. Then there are nests in which the hens will lay the eggs. Then we have scratching areas and perches. These are the main difference, if you are comparing conventional cages and traditional and the enriched one. Then we have barn or aviary. So we don't have cages with this type of system. The hens are free to circulate among the farm. They have access to the floor, and they have nests where to lay the eggs. Then we have the free range. Free range, the inside of the building is pretty similar to the aviary. The difference is that on free range system, hens can also have access to an outdoor area. And then looking to the organic production, which looks pretty similar to the free range, the main difference is that the outside area is even bigger. You a very brief introduction about what we are talking about, so just to provide you some numbers. I took the global layer population, let's say global into brackets, because I just consider the main key players, so the countries which have a huge layer population. And we can say that globally we can consider a layer population of roughly 3 billion hens, and most of them are still kept into cages. So almost 90% are in cages. These data are back to 2012, 2013, but are still pretty valid. After 5 years, we grow and we reach 382. But what the major difference in what happened in these 5 years? Basically, in 2012, as already told you, the traditional cages were banned. We had a transitional period the years before. And in this moment, as you can see, the main difference from 2012 to 2015, the conventional cages disappeared. So the producer basically invest in renovate their farm, so they shift to colony cages, to free-range system, or in some cases also to organic. And during these years, the producers were suffering quite a lot. Because as you can imagine, to renovate the farm, they couldn't maintain the production during that period. So the egg production dropped down. And we were, as I told you, suffering quite a lot. And on top of that, of course, the producer, they were not gaining money because they were not producing eggs, but they were paying a lot of money, a lot of investment to renovate the farms. Here again, a deep picture of the different rearing systems used in the different European countries, plus some insider, I would say. You can see the situation is still quite fragmented, so according to different countries, there is a preference of a rearing system. For example, in the Netherlands and in Germany, we have more aviary system, and UK is one of the leading countries for the free range. So why we had such a big revolution, I would say, in Europe? We had a very high consumer demand. They were asking for layers kept in a better condition. Also, the term cage is not very well appreciated, and according to this very high pressure, there was a combining factor, consumers, retailer, and so basically the producer were in some way pushed to change the type of production. Of course, according to the law, but I mean the European Commission stated the law because of this high pressure from the consumer. And basically, as I told you, the consumer doesn't like the word cage, and we would like to think, I mean, to aim, to wish that all the layers are reared in a very green area and they're happy, a lot of welfare. But basically, I mean, the consumer doesn't know some of the key elements that are regulating the farms. And we are talking about biosecurity or the social hierarchy, as I already told you before. So let's go a little bit deep what we are talking about. I like some difference according to the size of the farm, if we are considering conventional cages and alternative rearing system. I will speak to the food safety. Okay, as already mentioned before, the size is different. We are considering the space of the hen. In a conventional cage, each hen should have 450 square centimeter available. When we are talking about enriched cage, the space is higher. So we are talking about 750 square centimeter per hen. So if you are considering to move from conventional cages to enriched cage, in a very same farm, the number of hens are lower, so the eggs you are producing is less. And of course, this will have an impact on the cost you are getting and on the cost also for the investment. And as you can see, the space needed for the hens is even bigger if you are talking about cage-free hens. So in that case, we are talking about aviary or barn system, and again, bigger for free range and then for the organic production. Let's have a look to the performance a little bit deeper. Here is a study that was run in the UK. I mean, data reported the UK situation in 2012. There is the comparison among the production parameters, so the performance parameter, according to different type of housing. So we have the cage, we have the barn, we have the free range, and then we have the organic production. And we are considering layers at 56 weeks of production among the different rearing systems. As you can see, the number of collected eggs is progressively decreasing according to the housing system, and that's quite normal because we are putting less hens in the house. Then the percentage of uncollected eggs is increasing. And this is even, for the barn system and the free range, you have to take into consideration that when a hen is put into the cage, you are collecting all the eggs among the cage. But in a free system, like an aviary, the hens can easily lay the eggs on the floor, on the litter. So in some cases, you are not able to pick up all the eggs. In another study was highlighted the higher feed intake when we are moving from cage to free-range system and worsening of the feed conversion rate. In this study, the researchers were taking into consideration the feed intake and the water intake. And basically, they saw that, especially for the free-range system, the hens were eating more feed and they were consuming more water. If the hens were, there is, of course, a relation considering the amount of feed that they are eating and the amount of water they are drinking. And if they are drinking more water, that the feces also there will be more moisture in the feces. So potentially the eggs will be more dirty. Again, another research that was run in UK by the Laywell program at the University of Bristol, and another confirmation about the worsening of the feed conversion related to the amount of eggs in terms of kilogram produced by the hens. So basically, the hens are eating more feed and are producing less eggs. They are producing less eggs, as I already mentioned, because they are lower in terms of number, but they are also more susceptible to develop some disease and also under stress because of the interaction among the birds. And here is a slide that just to highlight challenges that is is taking a little bit of importance right now in Europe, and I'm talking about the keel bone damage. I'm involved in that project, so that I want to also to share this topic with you. We know that the keel bone is this bone in the breast, beside the breast of the birds, and there are some research that are in number also increasing right now, showing that keel bone fractures or deviation are high in number when we are moving from conventional cages to enriched one or free-range system, and they are very high in aviary and free-range system. Why these kind of fractures or keel bone deviation are important. Of course, as you can imagine, a fracture is painful. So these ends most probably will not lay properly. And on top of that, there are some research showing that these ends are also eating more feed because they need to recover to recover the fracture. This I found an interesting graphic. Basically, after the total renovation, I would say, about the farm system in Europe, these researchers were asking to some farmer in Belgium the perception and the measurement of some parameter in the farm, and I'm talking about smothering, about cannibalism, feather pecking, and mortality. And basically, the researchers were asking about to the farmer how these parameters were in terms of incidence before with the cage system and right now with this alternative system. And here they rate for all the 4 parameters taken into consideration, the higher to have so much more smothering, cannibalism, feather pecking, and mortality with the actual rearing system compared to the past. We already mentioned a little bit the higher susceptibility of these hens to develop some disease according to the rearing system. So we saw an increase of bacterial disease moving from conventional cages to aviary or free range. And also, you have to think that these birds, in a free-range system or aviary, they are in contact with the litter floor. They are outside, so they could be more susceptible to parasite. They are in contact with worms. So again, higher disease coming from the parasite contact. And also higher cannibalism, as already highlighted several times. So then just few elements about the shell quality. Here I listed some of the parameters that can provide a definition of what is important to identify the actual quality. All these parameters will need another meeting, I would say, because to go into detail, what I wanted to highlight a little bit is we are talking about eggs, so we are talking about food, and we are talking about food safety. Because these hens are in contact, direct in contact with their faces, these researchers were evaluating the percentage of Salmonella and Campylobacter on the surface of the shell or in the faces. And as you can see from the results, basically there is a higher Salmonella and Campylobacter presence, contamination on the shell and on the faces of these birds that are direct in contact with the faces. And of course, as everybody knows, Salmonella and Campylobacter are two very risky and serious foodborne pathology. So coming a little bit to the end of this presentation, I think we need to have also a little bit an economical evaluation about this possible change. I found this study, this American study, quite interesting because they were evaluating the labor cost according to the different rearing system. And they were comparing the labor cost in conventional cages, in enriched cages, and in aviary. And you can see, moving from conventional to enriched and to aviary, there is a progressive increase of the labor cost. Because, of course, people need to walk among the flock, need to pick up the eggs, needs to collect the dead birds. I mean, the inspection and the taking care of the birds is requiring more time. Then Peter Warhorner from Wageningen University is also providing some calculation to have an idea about the difference in productive cost per kilogram of eggs produced. We are not talking about currency. We are talking, let's say, about value, about unit. So you can see moving from conventional cages with a space, a dimension of 450 square centimeter per bird, to bigger cages, to the enriched one, and then to aviary system and to free range, you have a consistent increase in the cost. But I mean, it's quite easy to understand why we are saying that the hens, we have less hens, less eggs, they are eating more feed, and also you have huge mortality. So just to wrap up some elements that I discussed with you, I wanted to highlight again that there is quite a huge pressure by the consumers to have free cage eggs at the supermarket. So still the conventional cages are of course allowed, but more and more producers are really moving to free range system. And of course, this type of new system have anyhow an impact on the production. I highlighted many times, more feed consumption, less egg produced, high mortality, and also some, if we have to consider some welfare aspect related also to the production, as I mentioned to you, we have also this emerging topic, the keel bone damage. Possible higher contamination of the eggshell with very pathogenic bacteria, and also from economical point of view, basically this kind of rearing system are more expensive. Coming to the very last slide, just to highlight which are what we can consider the advantages of the cage system. So you have a lower disease, a lower contact with parasites, so a better hygiene of the flock, of the farm, of the hens, and so finally a better quality of the eggs. The eggs are cleaner. We mentioned also the social hierarchy, so in small group this is more stable, more maintained, and that's why we will have a lower mortality, and also the cost of production will be maintained.